No one could have anticipated that a commemorative occasion, brimming with heartfelt emotion, would transform into the epicenter of a real seismic shock. International media were left speechless, the British public erupted in protest, and the royal family found itself once again thrust into the merciless glare of public scrutiny. Everything began with one bold, unprecedented decision by Prince William. Excluding Queen from the ceremony honoring his biological mother, the woman forever known as the People's Princess. Within an institution where every gesture adheres to strict protocol and silence is hailed as the highest form of loyalty. This move was not only a breach of etiquette, but an open declaration of war against past grievances and unhealed wounds. The gathering took place during the annual Diana Award event, a tribute to Princess Diana's life and humanitarian legacy, as well as a celebration of the young people whose remarkable contributions to their communities embody her spirit. Instead of serving as a sacred moment of unity and thanksgiving, this year's ceremony became the prelude to an unprecedented emotional showdown between the old and the new generations of the monarchy. Queen's absence, now the wife of King Charles I, was not the result of a scheduling mix-up, but a choice laden with symbolism. In that silent gesture, William declared that had no place in the remembrance of his late mother. International outlets immediately labeled it a shock, a gesture of profound import, a public humiliation enacted not with words, but through an act dense with symbolism. When a senior royal figure publicly snubs the holder and the person who embodies his mother's marital anguish, it cannot be dismissed as happenstance. It's a statement. Loyalty to his mother trumps royal tradition. Terms like silent revolution and emotional revenge flooded the press to describe William's action. Some observers argued it was even more significant than Prince Harry's past public criticisms, since William, the heir to the throne and a symbol of stability and discipline, was directly undermining that very order. No one can deny that remains one of the most controversial figures in modern royal history, from her image as the other woman in the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage, to her long journey to reinvent herself and become queen consort. Yet never before had her presence, or rather her absence, been so central as when William stepped onto the stage alone to honor his mother. That moment was not only about remembrance and tears, but about choice. William needed no words, his action said it all. The world understood that the boy who had once walked behind his mother's coffin was now a man prepared to confront the shadows of his family's past. By doing so, he did not merely affect, he shook the monarchy to its core. It is no accident that each year hundreds of young people across the United Kingdom and the world anticipate the Diana Award. It's not just an awards presentation, but a spiritual pilgrimage, a chance for all who were touched by Diana's compassion to gather, give thanks, and carry forward her humanitarian torch. In a royal household synonymous with luxury, protocol, and distance, Diana was the spark that shattered barriers and a symbol of compassion and authenticity. She dared to live genuinely and to love fiercely. Thus, the Diana Award is more than a recognition program. It is a sacred memorial for millions. In the public memory, Diana was not merely a royal figure, but an icon transcending titles, crowns, and lineage, a champion of the marginalized, the homeless, the stigmatized ill, and the brokenhearted. Every year, the event's atmosphere feels like a solemn yet hopeful chapel, where each attendee can glimpse themselves in Diana's compassionate gaze. This year, when Prince William mounted the stage, attendees braced for an emotional speech, perhaps anecdotes about his mother or words of gratitude toward the young honorees. What no one foresaw was that the prince, who has always embodied duty's image, would serve as the protagonist of a historic twist, not just through his words, but by his earlier act of excluding from the guest list. That gesture was a silent oath. This sacred space belongs only to those who truly understand and respect my mother's legacy. In modern British history, no woman has left a footprint as deep and contentious as Diana's. She was admired for beauty and poise, but also revered for her resilience against royal pressures. The people dubbed her the People's Princess because she chose their side. Amid palace splendor, she reached out to bereaved patients, knelt with refugees, and embraced abandoned children. That human choice earned more respect than any title. The Diana Award ceremony thus becomes a space where every detail carries sacred weight, where presence or absence is not merely personal but a statement about history itself. When the woman many held responsible for Diana's tears was not invited, it was no oversight but a moral message. Not all have the right to enter a mother's sacred memories. William knows this better than anyone. He is not just the heir to the throne, but also the son who once followed his mother's coffin under millions' watchful eyes. He grew up silent, torn between duty and emotion, between his role as a royal and his loss as a child. Standing in a place where Diana's spirit still lingers, he chose the truth and his mother's honor over royal rules. No champagne, crowns, or lavish robes are required in that place, only sincerity, authenticity, and the living memory of a woman who moved the world's hearts. In that context, his absence was not just an empty chair, but a declaration that justice belongs to the memory of a woman no longer here. That year's auditorium was heavy with unnamed emotions. As William approached the podium, spotlights gently encircled him, a man bearing the crown's weight and a heart still beating with his mother's memory. Everyone expected a routine address, praise for Diana, encouragement for the awardees, and polite applause. But minutes later, William shattered that script and rewrote history. His voice, at first low and hushed as though whispering to Diana herself, spoke of her boundless compassion, her unconditional love, and the strength she passed to new generations. Gradually, his tone rose in emotion until he revealed, in a moment of profound intimacy, that he had never shared in public. For many years, my family has kept hidden part of my mother's memory, something deeply personal, real, and painful. He then disclosed that Diana kept a diary, a small notebook written in her own hand during her darkest times, free from press flashes and extravagant gowns. It contained her solitude, her craving for love, and her trembling words as a mother. The room fell silent. Some wept, others exchanged stunned glances. This was not merely the unveiling of a keepsake, but the first time in over 2 decades that Diana's own voice was truly heard, not through documentaries or second-hand accounts, but from her son's lips. William did not read from the diary. Its mere acknowledgement sent a global jolt. Why was this moment historic? Because for years, the monarchy operated under an unwritten rule: silence shields reputations. Personal anguish, emotional scars, and marital mistakes were buried beneath ceremony and tradition. Diana broke that silence in her landmark 1995 BBC interview. Now, William shattered it again, not to speak of himself, but to restore his mother's dignity. His decision was neither impulse nor spectacle, but a calculated, symbolic act in the most sacred royal arena. Revealing the diary's existence was a silent but firm declaration. It is time to hear the truth, however painful, and the only person entitled to share it is her blood son. From that moment onward, media outlets dubbed it the confession of a son. It was not an accusation or political ploy, but a release, for William, for Diana's memory, and for all who saw themselves in her compassionate gaze. The monarchy's cold facade cracked, letting through the same human light Diana once brought decades ago. When William confirmed the diary, the world held its breath. No longer rumors or sensational documentary whispers, but tangible words penned by the kingdom's once beloved princess. In those yellowed pages were no royal receptions or polished speeches, but a woman wrestling with loneliness, betrayal, and the oppressive silence of an loveless marriage. She wrote of nights of insomnia, solitary dinners in palace, and silent tears during official engagements. Her writing was unadorned, there were no scandalous, only raw honesty. That made her words invaluable. She feared her children might inherit her pain. She felt the world closing in as she was expected to smile for the public. The diary was her sole refuge, where she could breathe, weep, and be fragile without judgment. One of its most heartbreaking entries describes being reduced to a display piece, robbed of her right to feel human emotions. It spoke of fame's cost, not public admiration, but the cold, calculating scrutiny of the palace. Already convinced of Charles's affair with, Diana poured out her anguish, realizing her efforts to save her marriage were met only with indifference from those who should have supported her. Equally unsettling were the passages addressed to William and Harry, a mother's advice to grow with kindness, compassion, and the courage to speak the truth even when it hurts. Those words did more than move listeners. They confirmed William had honored his mother's deepest wish, restoring her voice. The diary had no vengeful tone. It was an emotional testament penned for herself and her sons. By announcing its existence, William granted her the right to tell her story, a story she was stripped of telling in life. His mother's soft, trembling voice now carried more weight than any scripted address. That is why the public behind William. They did not see a prince defying protocol, but a courageous son speaking for his mother, who had been forced into silence far too long. Diana's diary transcended time, reminding millions that she was not just a royal icon, but a wounded human with unhealed scars. By letting her voice ring out again, William not only revived his mother's memory, but restored her honor. His action also signified a turning point for the monarchy, where silence is no longer the safest option and truth, however painful, becomes the first step toward justice. A question now haunts many minds. Was William's exclusion of Queen and revelation of the diary an act of retribution, an emotional reckoning 40 years in the making? His decision was far from neutral. It was deliberate, chosen not with political logic, but the heartfelt resolve of a son raised in the shadow of unresolved family pain. That boy who once trailing his mother's coffin grew up amid a silent tension between two opposing images, a wounded mother and a father with another woman in his life. He learned early to navigate unnamed sorrow and hushed corridors in Kensington Palace. William may have played the part of exemplary prince for years, but silence is not synonymous with forgetfulness. It accumulates, festers, and burns like an unhealed wound. His act was not only to honor his mother, but to declare, "My mother is not forgotten, and what she endured will no longer be buried." It was not rancorous revenge, but emotional justice. The gesture of a son reclaiming his mother's silenced voice in an institution where history is written by the victors. William chose to rewrite it from the wounded perspective, on the very stage dedicated to Diana's memory. Critics called it the softest yet most profound blow ever delivered to the monarchy. No fierce statements, no memoirs, just intentional silence and a reflective gaze as he stepped forward with Diana's smiling portrait behind him. Excluding required no explanation. Her absence spoke volumes in that charged space. His place did not belong there, and William set that boundary not by speech, but by the weight of his decision. In that moment, William let his heart speak, not as a royal, but as a son who, after years of meeting palace expectations, broke free. He stood among hundreds yet spoke to one, his mother. Every decision, every word was directed at her, making his act impossible to ignore. Some conservative critics warned that William was playing with fire, reopening old wounds rather than letting the past rest. But the public felt he was doing the right thing, what many had longed to see from the monarchy. Unvarnished truth, not spin perfected by palace, but the real pain of an authentic voice. This was no personal vendetta. William did not verbally assail, nor mount a media campaign against his father or anyone else. His revival of Diana's memory and permission for her diary's voice to be heard was enough to make the world understand. It was a silent, elegant yet resolute revenge that compelled those who tried to erase the past to face its consequences. In an era demanding transparency from every power structure, William acted not just as a loving son, but as the leader of a new royal generation unafraid to feel, remember, and speak truth. His act marked a pivotal moment not only for his family's history, but for the British monarchy's evolution in the 21st century. Outside palace, life carried on in customary solemnity, but within its walls, an emotional earthquake had quietly taken root. The decision to reveal Diana's diary and exclude did not only shake the public, it exposed deep fractures in the royal family's heart. For the blow was more than disappointing, it was deeply personal. Insiders say she was left in confusion and pain upon learning she was not invited to what seemed a purely symbolic event. She has endured public judgment for years, once the scorned other woman, now a queen consort still not fully embraced by the nation. But just when it seemed the past had faded, William's decision returned it sharply, like a blade. Years of goodwill gestures, a serene smile beside Charles, avoidance of scandals, seemed to evaporate in one stroke. A place in Diana's sacred memory space, she faced not only a personal blow but a stark reminder that public forgiveness remains elusive. King Charles is caught between his roles as a father who understands his son's motivation and as a husband who must see his wife wounded before the world. According to palace advisors, Charles retreated from internal meetings after the ceremony. He cannot publicly rebuke William, yet he cannot fully defend. He remains trapped between an unresolved past and a turbulent present. Remember, although Charles is king, he is still a father and a husband whose own choices altered a dynasty's fate. He alone knows the diary's contents all too well, and Diana's uncensored truths about betrayal and abandonment continue to torment him. The monarchy's unspoken pact has always been this: shield the institution's image at all costs. But for William, loyalty cannot overshadow justice. That is the deepest rift between son and father. No public arguments, no incendiary statements like Harry's, just silence conveying more than 1,000 words. Silence because there is no reconciliation, silence because each guards the woman they love differently. High-ranking royals fear this crisis signals an emotional separation within the family, each building their own realm of affection. If once Diana was the unhealed scar, now she marks the boundary. On one side lies a past not yet redeemed, on the other, an uncertain future, and between them, the woman still seen as the symbol of a controversial chapter. The palace can try to soothe public opinion, soften media coverage, and march on with its engagements as if nothing changed. But deep in William's heart and across the nation, something has shifted. The once invisible crack now lies in plain sight, and though the monarchy has not collapsed, it is not the same. Diana, from beyond, has shaken the institution that tried to silence her voice for centuries. The monarchy may have functioned as a flawless image control machine, every step, gesture, word, and expression choreographed like a stage play with no room for error, a place where personal emotions were cloaked in ritual. But with one act, a mother's voice revived by her son, that machine began to wobble. Now, as the dust settles, people can see clearly that the once perfect royal symbol is crumbling, not because of sensationalist media or conspiracy theories, but because of unvarnished truth, spoken with real tears and trembling words in real paper. Princess Diana's diary is not simply a personal memoir, but living proof of a truth concealed too long, a wounded woman silenced by the institution that once elevated her. Now that silence is shattered, the royal myth of perfection cannot stand as before. Diana was crafted as a flawless model, beautiful, elegant, compassionate, and exemplary. Yet she was also a royal's visual tool, celebrated for her closeness to the people while secretly drowning in unspoken pain. When she dared to defy the script, revealing the love triangle, her loneliness, and her exile within her own marriage, she became uncontrollable. After her death, the royal family attempted to reconstruct her image, praising her humanitarian works but shunning the shadows of her story. Now William's act has dropped that velvet curtain, allowing the world to witness broken relationships, loveless marriages, and children forced to suppress their grief. William does not accuse, he simply restores his mother as a real human with real wounds. The fall of the royal symbol is not with a roar or talk of abdication. It begins with an absence, the seat where should have been, and a void in William's heart that never healed. From that point on, the public asked if someone like Diana, hailed as the ideal model, could suffer at the hands of the very system she served. How many other beautiful truths hide behind facades? If William, so loyal, can no longer stay silent, who will still believe in royal perfection? For a new generation born after her death, crowns hold less sway than the courage of a person who stands up for those they love, even at the cost of their throne. The monarchy remains, anchored in law, tradition, and a segment of the public's affection. But after William's gesture, its shine has dimmed. A discomfiting question arises: can royalty preserve its dignity while embracing humanity, truth, and real emotion? If not, what meaning does it hold in the 21st century? While banquets continue and rituals endure, something irreversible has occurred. The public has glimpsed the crack, and once truth is seen, one cannot look away. Diana, though resting beyond, still fulfills her role, not as the people's princess, but as the one who shattered a myth ill-suited to reality. When William broke the silence, when Diana's voice rang from her dusty diary pages, and when Queen's image was erased from that sacred memorial space, it was no longer private family business. It became a silent proclamation of a new truth. The past cannot be buried, and human emotions cannot remain hidden forever under protocol. The monarchy stands at a historic crossroads. Will it keep its mask of perfection or dare to remove the disguise, confront the truth, and evolve? William does not speak only for his mother. He unveils a revolution from within, one that begins with a son's courage and could become a wake-up call for an entire dynasty.